Hey guys, All Sports 83 sporting another video at you, and in today's video I'm going to reveal my power rankings for the XFL season following week number 1. Now, a couple of disclaimers about these power rankings is I'm not going to base them totally on wins and losses. There's always something that takes place in some of these games that's going to make you feel a certain way, and I'm definitely going to be kind of factoring in a lot of those different things. Going to be using some of my gut feelings about certain games and certain teams and players, things like that. Obviously, this is just my opinion. You're free to disagree. You're welcome to comment down below whether you agree or disagree and what your thoughts about the teams as we move throughout the season. Now, I don't want to waste a whole lot of time. I want to jump right into these power rankings for all 8 teams, and we're going to start with team number 8. The Tampa Bay Vipers, they start us off at the bottom, not just because they played a bad game, but because they played a bad game with their starting quarterback. Some of the other teams that struggled throughout week 1 couldn't say the same. They had injured quarterbacks and they started their backups. But unfortunately, Aaron Murray just did not look that good in his opening week as the Vipers quarterback. And it's starting to spell out a little bit of a track record here. He struggled in the AAF. Now, I know a lot of folks are saying that it's because he played for a particularly struggling team in the AAF, but it seems like there's a pattern here, and you might worry that there might be a place where you get to a point where you're thinking that maybe because of his performance, those teams struggled, because they certainly struggled to find any kind of rhythm offensively this weekend against the Guardians. There was a couple of moments where they did get a little bit of a rhythm going, but that's when Aaron Murray was standing on the sideline. Quentin Flowers would come in, and he made some plays, and oddly enough, they would get down in the red zone, and some questionable coaching as well. They put Aaron Murray back in the game, and they didn't do so well. So real struggle for the Vipers this weekend. Hopefully they can get things turned around. Mark Trestman, hopefully he can tighten the ship up a little bit. Maybe utilize Quentin Flowers a little bit more. He looked a little bit more electric in his debut. So I'm thinking Viper fans probably want to see a little bit more of Quentin Flowers coming up this week in week number 2. So there's a couple of bright spots. Dan Williams, great receiver. He had a great showing on his debut for the Vipers, but all in all, they just did not look good, had zero rhythm, and it really kind of showed itself at the end with the score. So it just looked really bad. The LA Wildcats come in at number 7, and really for a multitude of reasons. We'll start with quarterback play with backup quarterback Charles Knopf. He had some good moments early in the game, but it seemed like to me as the game went on and the Roughnecks made adjustments to their coverage schemes and their blitzing schemes, it just looked like the moment got too big for Knopf, and I think that trickled into other areas of the team as well. I thought the coaching staff for the Wildcats struggled as well, and you saw some of that on the sidelines. There was a moment where Knopf came off to the sideline. They were confused about what was going on, and Knopf was kind of complaining to the coaching staff, and he was complaining to head coach Winston Moss, and it didn't look like Coach Moss had a handle on that situation. It's almost as if he let Knopf have that moment and kind of talk over him, and it didn't show very good leadership skills. At least on television, it didn't look that way. And so it just didn't have a good image just from a viewer perspective. And so and I think that some of those things started to show themselves throughout the game. It just didn't look like the Wildcats were making very good adjustments. It looked like the Roughnecks were making good adjustments, and as the game progressed, they just get further and further apart. The Wildcats fell further and further behind. Now, you might make an argument that the Wildcats should be below the Vipers and be at number 8 this week in the power rankings. But one thing that I do like about the Wildcats is they have a pretty good defense, it seems. Hopefully starter Josh Johnson, quarterback, will come in and bring some stability to that offense, and hopefully Coach Winston Moss can make those coaching adjustments as they head into week number 2. They also have a pretty good receiver. I think his last name is Spruce. He seemed like he had a pretty good debut for the Wildcats as well. So there's some adjustments that can be made, but they're going to have to make them quick. We don't know the status of Josh Johnson, if he's going to be healthy enough to play in week 2, but they really need him, I think, for that, hopefully the stability that he can bring to that offense. It's early, it's after week 1, but it's only 10 weeks, so if you're not careful, you'll look up, it's week 5, and you're out of playoff contention. So hopefully the Wildcats can kind of create some of that stability, not just on the quarterback side, but in the coaching side. They need to make those adjustments quick so they can get ready for week number 2. Number 6 on our list this week is the Seattle Dragons. Now, even though they lost the game to the DC Defenders, I actually thought there was quite a bit to build on here. I thought they played pretty well for 3 quarters, which is a pretty daunting task because it's really difficult for a team to travel from the west all the way to the east. You lose 3 hours, it messes with your internal clock, and so I thought they battled that, plus a very difficult and tough defenders team. Even though Brandon Silvers, the quarterback for the Dragons, kind of fell apart at the end of the game, I actually thought there were moments in the game where he found some nice rhythm. He made a lot of good connections with their receiver, Austin Prohl, who I thought had a really good debut for the Dragons. So I thought there's a lot that we can build on with this team. My biggest concern with week number 1 and possibly moving forward was maybe some of the play calling from Coach Jim Zorn. I know he's got a long resume, head coach in the NFL, and I mean, I know there's a reason why he's a coach and I'm not, but it just looked like there were some times where they could have made some different decisions on the play calling and kind of spice up that playbook and try to figure out a way to keep the defenders on their heels. They did not do that. I think they kind of fell flat on some of those drives where they could have used some of that, and I think they ultimately paid for that. But ultimately, I think that the Dragons have a pretty good roster. I'm anxious to see how they're going to rebound. I thought, again, Brandon Silver seemed mostly poised throughout the game. I would trust that he's going to be able to make some adjustments and have a much better showing moving forward if they can just, kind of keep their wits about them and make those adjustments well. So we'll see what they look like. I want to see what they look like at home and before we can learn more about this team. Number 5 is the St. Louis Battlehawks. Now, I know anyone watching this video is going to say, well, the Battlehawks won their game, so why are they placed 5th below the team they beat? Well, I have some reasons for that I want to talk about when I get into the Renegades later in the video. But for now, let's talk about the Battlehawks. Let's start with the quarterback play of their young quarterback, Jordan Ta'amu. I thought his gameplay was kind of flat, and so he had a couple of key moments. One really long run late in the game, it was a key moment in the game, but I want to say this, that I was really impressed with his poise and leadership and how he was able to stay calm on the road against a pretty tough defense in the Renegades. I thought he did a really good job from that perspective, and I think ultimately that helped them win the game, his ability to be a leader even as a young guy. I was also really impressed with head coach Jonathan Hayes. He seemed to control his team even in some kind of shoddy moments where some guys were getting in some scuffles, and he took control of those guys, got them on the sideline in a calm way. I thought he did a really good job with that. So I think there's some things to build on with this Battlehawks team, especially their defense. All right, moving on to number 4, and that is the Dallas Renegades. Now, again, you're wondering why the Renegades are placed over the Battlehawks at number 4 when they lost to the Battlehawks at home. Listen, folks, look, they didn't have their starting quarterback. PJ Nelson really struggled all day long. I think he was the X factor on why Dallas did not play well. I think this game looks very different with Landry Jones. He did dress, but he did not play. Landry Jones is slated to start this week. This is a solid football team. They were picked to win the entire XFL at the beginning of the season. That's not just by chance. I think if these two teams played again with Landry Jones, who is healthy and going to play this weekend, I don't think it's the same game at all. I think the Battlehawks have something to build on, but this Renegades team is very solid all the way through. And I do think that Coach Bob Stoops is gonna rebound from this loss. I think he's gonna use this loss to make this team better, and getting Landry Jones back is going to be huge for this team. I think you're going to see a very different Renegades team this weekend. That's just going to be my big prediction for the week. And I'm telling you, you're going to look back at this week and look at this and say that it was probably an anomaly. This Renegades team is really, really good. They're solid all the way through, offense and defense, when you compare them with the rest of the league. And they're going to be near the front all year long. That's if they stay healthy, that is. So we'll see where we look at after week 2 games. The New York Guardians come in at number 3 on the power rankings this week, and it feels a little high, even for me, as I put this list out. To me, I think the Guardians had what would be the weakest victory of the week. Just didn't seem like they played particularly well for long periods of time. It was very good for them that they really got out early and scored that touchdown quickly early in the game. I think they got the field goal first or something. But they kind of established themselves as the better team early on against the Vipers. And but they went through a stretch where they didn't look very well. I think Matt McGloin played well. I think he's another one of those quarterbacks who's going to be able to keep his composure and have some poise. I think that's going to be really important for the team. They're going to feed off of that. I do think that they have a pretty well-rounded roster. I think all the way through, I think that they look solid. But this is going to be one of those teams to me that it just depends on what you're going to get each week. I think they have the roster to be strong, but I also think that they just seem flat at times, and if you seem flat at times, there's a chance you can go out there and just lay an egg. So hopefully that doesn't happen to the Guardians. I want them to go out and play well. I want all these teams to have good games, but you might chalk it up to first week jitters, still trying to establish and get used to each other. That certainly could be the case with all of these games, all these quarterbacks, at some of the moments they had that were flat, but I think the Guardians are a pretty good team, so I think they're well-rounded. They certainly showed it against the Vipers, and we'll see what they do in week number 2. The DC Defenders come in at number 2 this week in the power rankings, and really I learned 2 major things about this team this week. First, Cardell Jones is a stud on the football field. There's a reason why he was one of the biggest names coming into the season when he got signed to be the quarterback for the Defenders. And he certainly lived up to that this week. He's got a big body. He's got a strong arm. He's good enough on his feet to extend those plays. He played big this week, and just didn't look like any moment was too big for him. We'll see how he goes moving forward. We'll see what happens when he finds some adversity, but he looked really good this week. The other thing is, I really like Pep Hamilton. I think he does a really great job of the play calling. He just looks like the right fit for DC. I'm really interested to see him coach throughout the year. He was very entertaining, and I thought he did a solid job coaching this team and getting them ready, and basically making the adjustments to go out there and win the game against what was a tougher than expected Dragons team this week. All right, if you're doing the math and you're crossing off the teams, you know that the number 1 team this week in the power rankings is the Houston Roughnecks. Now, for starters, we could just say that they do have a really solid team, and they do. Both sides of the ball, they played very well. But let's just cut this chase and say the truth. The player of the week this week was P.J. Walker. This guy is electrifying. He was the most entertaining player, the most productive player, and the most key player of any of the games in week 1 for the XFL. He was must-watch television if you're a football fan or even just a sports fan. He really looked like an NFL player. I know a lot of other analysts and YouTubers out there are really comparing him to Russell Wilson with his gameplay, and I really can't disagree. I thought he played super well, and I'm excited to keep watching this guy play. I mean, he was so much fun. I actually thought June Jones did a really good job with the play calling and how he ran the team and his philosophy. I thought the run and shoot would take a little longer to take hold, but it really worked well starting out of week 1. So I'm anxious to see how these guys move forward. But hey, that's it for the first ever power rankings for the XFL. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Agree, disagree, whatnot. Just have a good time with it, and hopefully we'll do these maybe even weekly. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time on the channel. Have a good one.